you hear me okay? My name is Asif Rehmani, and I have a huge presentation. Actually, I'm not sure if I'll get a chance to cover all of it. So, having said that, you can take this bit.ly link and download the presentation if you like. All right. Here's some of the information about some things that you want to keep in mind as to why you are at this presentation, and if it makes sense for you to stay at this presentation. If you're thinking about things like, how do I support our end users while still doing my regular job? They're just, the end user support, end user training is a hard topic. How do I do that and do other things that I need to do? And our training methods are not working for users, just has not been working for all the stuff that we have done, even though we provided so much training, so much content to people, but I just don't see people using it. They're still coming to me for help. They're still coming to me for direction and support all the time. What do I do? If you're thinking about any of these things or all these things, then you're in the right session, because we're going to be talking about all that stuff and a whole lot more. My name is Asif Rehmani. I'm a Microsoft MVP from Visual SP. The presentation title officially is Stop Training and Start Helping Your Users. You can download my presentations, as I mentioned earlier, at this bit.ly link. If you have issues with the bit.ly link, let me know. I'll try to get into the QA also and give you the long link, the URL. All right, just a little bit about myself. I won't go into this too much, but I've been in this community with SharePoint to begin with in 2002. Have stayed there ever since 2020 now, so 18 years of first SharePoint, lots of different training, consulting, mentoring, writing, and everything else in between. Then turning to Microsoft Office 365 in 2016, and then I've been focusing on that ever since. And my focus is very much on end user adoption, helping users, not just by training them, but truly helping them. And that's what we're here to talk about. All right, how can we do that? How can we make that happen? All right. So this thing I hear a lot, why can't my users just do what I tell them to do? I mean, I'm just trying to help them, right? A typical admin would say that. But I guess the question is that, are we truly trying to help them? Are we truly trying to help them, or are we trying to train them and trying to push them into something that we want them to do? That's the question. And to answer that question, first, let me actually just stop sharing my screen just for a second here and make sure there's no issues or questions. Everything is good so far. Okay, let me start with actually talking about a quick story that hopefully will set the stage right. Once again, let me go to the presentation. Here it is. So this story, quick one, is of a training that I did many years ago in Chicago. Chicago is my hometown as well. I did this training for a company, an institution called EIIA. And this EIIA is actually, they're very focused on providing secondary educational insurance to institutions. So when I did the training, and this is not me, by the way, but this is a typical setup of a regular training that happens, right? When I did the training, there were 30 folks in the training. There was a 2-day period that I did the training for. Lots of different things were taught in that training. This was a SharePoint specific one, right? So we talked about things like list libraries, pages security, permissions, web parts, and everything else in between. 2 days, I went through it. After the second day, the person who hired me said, "Hey, Asif, could you stay over in this corner office here, which had a beautiful skyline view of Chicago?" And I said, "You know what? All you gotta do is stay in there. If there's any questions from anybody, they can come and ask you. Obviously, we'll pay you for this extra day also. Just be here, relax, and just help people as if anybody needs it." So I'm thinking, obviously, I covered every single thing that I need to cover in the last 2 days. There's going to be no questions. What do you mean? We talked about everything. Why would there be any questions? Oh man, boy, was I wrong about that. there was a line out the door for the whole day of just people wanting to ask questions about all things in SharePoint. I mean, for example, I remember one lady asking, "Hey, I have these pictures in my file share, and I know you talked about something where you can upload it into SharePoint. Can you show me where to do that?" And I distinctly remember talking about picture libraries and how you can upload stuff to picture libraries, and I had to show it to her step by step how to do it. But I felt very ashamed that I thought I covered all these different things the last couple of days. Was I really a horrible teacher that nobody remembered anything that I taught them? Then I realized after the experience in Chicago that, maybe this is not the best way to empower end users. Maybe the traditional end user training doesn't really work for users. In fact, it never really has worked, in my opinion, for true end users. Not because end users are not smart or anything. Obviously, all of us are end users of something and we are smart, but a true end user of a specific system, technology, whatever, is using that technology to get their job done, not necessarily to get trained or become an expert. They just want to get their job done and be done, right? So then I ended up writing an article called "Training End Users is a Waste of Time." I thought it was going to be very controversial. Many people just calling me out saying, "Hey, you're a trainer. How can you say that?" Well, what happened surprised me because many people out there who saw the article said, "You know what? I've experienced the exact same thing." Uh, People said that it's not been working. We have been trying to train our users and it's just not been working. So it resonated with a lot of people who commented on the post, who liked it. You can see some of these examples of the actual comments here, which are all available on LinkedIn. When you download this PowerPoint deck, by the way, the notes for this deck has a lot of links. You're going to find a lot of that stuff in there. Here's some more comments. At the end of the day, people agreed that when you do a traditional end user training class, people just don't remember all the things they need to know later when they actually need to use it. In fact, if you have looked at this before, the learning curve for adults, this is very true where the regular formal training is only about 10% of our retention of the things we remember when we actually need to use them. It's more of the informal training and also specifically the experiential, the experiences that we have that we truly remember what we need to do. So if you have done it, it's much easier to do it again and you do it again, and then it just becomes a part of you, right? It becomes a habit, it becomes a skill, but you got to experience it. So then the question comes to mind as to why are so many organizations still spend most of their training budget on regular formal training methods. The traditional end user training of getting people together, just like I did at that training in Chicago, and trying to train them. 90% or more of the budget in organizations usually go for that, the formal training method for end users. Yeah. Why is that? I mean, isn't that, if it's not working, like Albert Einstein said here, if it's not working, why not stop doing it? Unfortunately, the answer many times is that they're looking to declare that, okay, training was done. It was provided to users. And they're looking to just check a checkbox and just say, all right, it was done. That's unfortunate, but it does happen. I still see it after, more than how long, almost 2 decades of me training, consulting, and doing these things and seeing that. I still see the exact same patterns, and it surprises me and sometimes it's disappointing, unfortunately. So before we answer some of these questions as to what is a better way, and I do have some answers, some suggestions as to what has worked for people that I've worked with for many years now. But before we do that, we have to empathize a little bit. We have to ask ourselves, aren't we all end users as well? Aren't we? I mean, we're end users of something. Most of you coming to this session are probably not end users of Microsoft 365 or SharePoint or Microsoft technologies in general, because if you're coming here, you're hopefully already a power user or beyond, but you're probably an end user of something. And when I was thinking about this, and the example that came to my mind was cell phones, right? We all are users of cell phones, and in cell phones, there's lots of features that we use. Now, I'm a Samsung Android guy personally, so I can talk to that. I've not used an iPhone for many, many years personally, but in Samsung, in Android, there's some non-intuitive features like if you double-click the button on the right side of the phone, you get to the camera, and I use that often to take pictures of my kids and all. Click, click, and boom, I'm there. But I had to learn that. It was not intuitive to begin with. There's a Bixby button, which sometimes gets in the way, but sometimes it's really cool to set quick reminders, and I do that often as well. There's a really cool feature for on-body detection of a phone. It keeps it unlocked if it's on your body. You can train the phone to recognize when you say, "Hey Google," and which I use that often when the screen is off and it recognizes you. It's like if you're driving and you got the phone and hopefully in the secure place, and you say, "Hey Google, give me this, give me that," it gives you information. Very cool stuff. Keeping device unlocked when at a trusted place. So if you're at at your home, for example, automatically it knows to keep it unlocked. None of these things are intuitive, at least not for me. It was not. And I had to learn them, but I didn't learn them on the first day of when I first got the phone, right? Would you want to be trained on all these features when you buy the phone? And what if when buying the phone, the person who was selling it at the T-Mobile store, which I'm a T-Mobile customer, had said, "All right, sit down here. I'm going to give you a complete training of everything you need to know ever on this phone before you get started." I would have said, "Heck no, I'm not doing that." Nobody does that. You find out things, you Google things, you ask somebody, you mess around, you figure things out, and that's how you quote unquote train yourself on certain things. And once you've done it enough, it becomes intuitive, right? So the remaining agenda for this session, I'm going to be talking about how you can evaluate traditional methods of what works, what doesn't work, traditional training methods. We'll talk about some case studies of companies also that have tackled user support. I have one or two, I believe, that I'll talk about that specifically, what they have done. And also lots of lessons and stories from my experiences. I've been doing this for quite some time. Our company, Visual SB, also focuses on very much training, supporting, helping end users in innovative ways using products and services. So I'll be talking about some of those stories, some of those lessons as well, of things that have worked, and then also talking about things that don't work. All right. Alrighty. First question we have to ask ourselves, do end users really want to be trained, or do they want to be helped? Right? Do end users want to be trained, or they want to just be helped with what they need? My thought is they don't want to be trained. I mean, when it was the last time when someone came to you say, "Hey, can you train me on this?" Usually the question is, "Can you help me with this?" That's the word that we use when we need help with something. We don't say, "Train me on it," but "Can you help me with it?" And obviously, automatically, they get trained on that thing that you're helping them with, right? The bottom line is helping them, not training them, because that's what users really, really are looking for anyway. Going beyond that, what is the purpose of traditional end user training anyway? I mean, are we truly trying to fill up a person's head with information and making sure to like seal it really, really tightly once we fill it up and hoping they don't forget the information until they need it, which could be, who knows, 6 months, a year, 5 years down the line, and sometimes that happens when you don't need something for a long time. Well, I think this next slide, you already know this, but just in case, there is a thing called the forgetting curve, right? The Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And it says, and I believe it, I've seen it for myself also with things that I have learned, that the forgetfulness of something that you've learned happens, unfortunately, very quickly, unless you use it, unless you apply it. And within a day, you can lose half of the information that you just learned. If it was just theoretical and not as practical, it was just learning for the sake of learning, unless you apply it. The forgetting curve is just too steep, and it just doesn't stop after the first day. After that also, gradually you forget more and more and more. That's a fact. So why are companies looking at training end users from only their perspective and not trying to understand why should the users care, right? Empathy in this case. What's in it for the users? Do we think about that? Do we think about why is this person that I'm training, quote unquote training, is going to care about what I need to train them? So let me do a quick experiment. Since it looks like we do have enough time, I'll do this quick experiment. Those of you who are out there, if you could follow along, great. If you just want to listen to me talk about it, that's fine too. If you put your hands together, and I'm putting mine together right now. You can't see me, but I'm putting it together right now. I'm a righty, and for me, my right thumb is on the top. Okay, for you, it might be your left thumb. I don't know. Sometimes, many times I've heard the righties also, they have their left thumb on top. Whatever it is. For mine is right, yours could be left, or could be right. Now, interlace it again, but put the other thumb on top. So if it was right, put the left thumb on top. If it was left, put the right thumb on top and see how it feels. It doesn't feel natural, does it? So when you do that, and if I say, all right, just do this for the rest of your life. If it was the right thumb before, now it's going to be a left thumb. If it was a left thumb, now it's a right. Just do this for the rest of your life. And I don't tell you why. How would you do it? Would you just go along with it? I mean, you have to start with why, right? If you don't start with why, if you say something like this to your users also, hey, just do this because I say so, because I know it's good for you, they won't listen to you. Never works. Never, never, ever works. My theory in this sense is there's this radio called the WIIFM. What's in it for me, right? Radio WIIFM. That's always running in everybody's mind. And the question then is that, are you tuned into that radio station for your users? Can you truly empathize with your users? And if you don't tune into that radio WIIFM for your users, mark my words that they'll tune you out. Either we tune into their radio station and understand what it is that they need, that they want, or they'll tune us out. There's a really good quote by Amanda Downing from LL Bean that you have to add value to end users' work with your changes. You can't just say, make this change for the sake of change. You got to explain and start with why. It has to be value. All right. Let's look at an example. This is something very specific to the Microsoft ecosystem, something that many of us, including myself, have gone through. So we'll talk about that specific example. This challenge of moving people from Dropbox to OneDrive for business, right? I was an avid user of Dropbox for many years. I'm sure many of you out there were also Dropbox users, or maybe are still Dropbox users. Now, if you need to take your end users from Dropbox to OneDrive, and if you've already made that migration yourself, which I did myself, then you can understand what the benefits are. Why would you want to do it, right? So first, you could empathize with the users, understand exactly what it is that they're going through because you've gone through it. Now, if you have never been a Dropbox user yourself and you have this challenge up ahead, my suggestion, maybe a bit radical, but become a Dropbox user yourself. Become a Dropbox user. It's free. You can get it, I believe, still 2 gigabytes for free. And understand the pros and cons of why you would want to switch once becoming a Dropbox user from Dropbox to OneDrive. What's good about Dropbox? What's good about OneDrive? What's pros and cons of each? And then communicate the pros of switching from Dropbox to OneDrive. You have to empathize. You have to start with where the users are at before you can take them to where you want to take them. An example over here, for example, you can easily promote documents from OneDrive to SharePoint document library when you're a OneDrive user. You can't do that with Dropbox. It's easier to share documents with colleagues using OneDrive, right? Much easier if everybody else is also using OneDrive, and so are you. Native support for saving documents in OneDrive as you work on them. It's just if you're a Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, Word user, In fact, for example, I'm using PowerPoint right now, and if I make changes, automatically it saves those changes if you have that stored in OneDrive. In Dropbox, it doesn't have that sync because Dropbox and Microsoft PowerPoint are not the same company. OneDrive and Microsoft PowerPoint is the same company as Microsoft. So these and many more examples, pros like this you can communicate to users to help them understand what's in it for them for making the switch. All right, so let me move to the next part of my presentation, which is understanding all these different things of the challenges and everything else. What specific action plan can you take? What am I suggesting that we do? If the regular traditional training is not working, you could take examples of like what I showed you, some of the stuff you could do, but how do you do it? How do you implement it? What is the plan? Let's talk about the plan. In my opinion, the plan is a 3-step plan. All right, you gotta stop conducting traditional end user trainings, instead hold frequent orientation awareness sessions. Okay, so stop conducting traditional end user trainings, kind of bold, I know, but hold frequent orientation awareness sessions, and I'll talk more about that exactly with how do you do that. Second, provide training and help content in context to users and in the flow of their work. So instead of just having loads and loads of things that they can look at, videos and whatever, why not provide that in context to where they are? And third thing, continually evaluate what your users need. You have to continually evaluate and improve, and that's very necessary for success of any effort that you want to convey to especially end users. Let's dig into it. Number one, so delivering awareness sessions instead of training sessions. Awareness, orientation, whatever you want to call them, that's what they are. They're making people aware of what's in it for them. Okay, so we'll dig into that. In fact, in this case is the case study I'm going to bring into play. Sony's awareness sessions. Sony, I'm sure you've heard of Sony, pretty major corporation. They did a really good job at their awareness sessions, and they had a few components that I want to talk about. I was involved in that orientation awareness session when they were making a migration from one SharePoint version to the other many years ago. And let me talk about the components of that. Yeah. So here are the 4 components. First, very short orientation sessions. I guess maybe not very short, but short enough, 4 hours or less. You're in 4 hours, you're done as an end user, no more. Okay, even if it's a major upgrade, you've done that, that's your first kickoff orientation session, you're done. Now, obviously, I'm not saying this is the only one. You can have, again, another one in 2 weeks from now, a month from now, but that one, you're done. Introduction was made to the upgraded application, what it is, what it looks like, here it is, here's where you go to do this, etc., etc. This thing over here as to why, see if I can, yeah. How does it impact your role? How does it impact you as a user and your department and your team? That's what everybody really wants to know. What's in it for me? Why should I care? Okay. And then also this, very important. Sony in this case mentioned and told them, here's what you do when you have questions, when you need help, when you want to open up a support ticket, when you want to provide feedback, when you want to search for our Knowledge Hub repository. All those things, they were very clear to users as to here's what you do to get help. So you're not feeling alone, especially these days with, I'm sure many of you yourself or your users are at home working due to this pandemic, unfortunately. That's super, super must. You need for them to understand how they can get help, how they can get support. Otherwise, that loneliness factor is very depressing. I've seen it. Another thing that they did really well is providing a stability plan. I have a whole long story of exactly how they described it, but I won't go into that. Otherwise, I'm going to run out of time because it does take like 5-10 minutes just to describe that. But a stability plan, if you're not aware of that, basically says what is not changing. Okay, that's why the anchor is there. What is not changing has to be conveyed very specifically, not just what's changing. So you're providing an anchor for them to have that, the end users to have that stability, so they feel comfortable. All right, well, these things are not changing, and other stuff is changing. So at least I have some anchor, something that they can ground themselves with. Yeah. All right. Number 2. This is my favorite, something that I've done a lot of work in personally. Our company has also done a lot of work in. I've done a ridiculous amount of research into this category, and we have implemented so much in that, and that's delivering just-in-time contextual help to users. Help and learning in the flow of work. If you're not familiar with the flow of work or learning in the flow of work movement, there's Deloitte focuses on this quite a bit. They have a huge department actually focusing just on that. There's also another personality. His name is Josh Bersin, last name Bersin. Read some of his articles out there as well. He actually used to be with Deloitte as well. This concept is something that has really taken off, and it makes a lot of sense. And instead of just doing it conceptually, I'm going to actually tell you, give an example of what I mean by contextual help. In my case, contextual help is how I created the slide deck. That's just one of the ways contextual help has helped me as a presenter. Here's what I mean by that. This honestly is an actual screenshot of the slide deck the way it used to be. Not this slide deck that I'm doing right now, but a different slide deck. This is what it used to look like. Lots of black and white, not much colors, unless I threw in a picture here and there, then there would be some color, but nothing else. It was just super plain. Then one day, I was in PowerPoint years ago, and something popped up. And that contextual help that popped up automatically helped me to make my presentations look like this. Yeah. Now, I'm not claiming that my presentations look amazing or anything, but they look much better, I think, than they used to. At least I think so. It's just a little bit easier to look at, right? And if you're not familiar with this, by the way, let me actually quickly show you. Here's my slide deck, right? I'll go to one of them, like this one. Okay, see this one. This is design ideas right here in PowerPoint. You click on design ideas, and here you go. You can just pick a different one, just like that. Boom, boom, just like that. So that's what I used, design ideas, and it came to me one day where it presented itself to me. All right, you can do this, and that was beautiful, and that just changed my whole presentations going on forward from that day. So really cool. That's what I call contextual help. I didn't have to go find that information somewhere else. I didn't have to go looking. It was just there. All right, let me take this over here once again. Moving forward, so the focus should be, in my humble opinion, on context, not only content, because access to content is not that much of a challenge anymore. I mean, you hold your phone and you have access to the whole world's repository in your hand, right? Content is not a problem, it's the context. That's the challenge right now. How can I get the right information to the appropriate person at the right time and in context of their environment? That's the challenge. In fact, too much content is also a challenge these days. We're just distracted by too much stuff. There's this quote by the Land O'Lakes end user technology manager, Mark Casella, who said, just-in-time training is better than providing users too much information at once. And I completely agree with Mark in this sense over here. You have to just provide enough, not provide too much. You know, if you do provide too much, sometimes people actually don't even use it because it's too much, because they don't know where to start. Sometimes you just want to provide just enough and not too much. There's a concept of performance support, which if you're not familiar with, you can Google that or Bing it. Performance support basically says helping users get their job done. You know, you want to focus on how do I help users at their moment of need to get their job done. And that's it. If you can do that, you're truly helping your users. Just like everything else, by the way, I have links to all these things like performance support. If you want more information about it, it's in the bottom in the notes in the slide deck. So then how do you implement just-in-time help for users? This question should come up in your mind that Asif is talking about, this concept of just-in-time help or performance support to be something that many institutions have used successfully. Well, what does it look like? Let me see it. I'm also very much of a visual guy, so I also try to explain in visual format exactly what it looks like. So let me try that. First thing, oops, yeah, here we go. First thing is providing context-sensitive help to users, right? The whole concept of context-sensitive help to users wherever they go, we're talking about virtual sense, is something that you want to be aware of. So I'll show you an example here. Just few learning assets you want to provide them on page to page instead of having everything everywhere, or just having one repository with a large library of videos, which many of our clients had done in the past. Unfortunately, their whole huge investment in these libraries only got used by a few people. It's like, single digit percentage of people who actually go and take advantage of that. It's unfortunately never ever been that beneficial to people with having. I mean, I'm not saying it's not good to have a large library of content and videos and stuff like that. In fact, we did this as a company also for many years. We still do some of that, but that should not be the only thing. You can't just have a large library of content that's sitting in a knowledge hub somewhere that people don't know where it is. You gotta show them in context. This is an actual screenshot from a customer. And in this case, they're showing the information. And this is a rudimentary kind of, it's just 5 things, but these specific 5 things were there contextually depending on the permission of the user. That was a cool thing. Where if you are an end user, let's say if you're an end user in SharePoint in this case who were just had view rights or read rights, you would see some different links than if you had edit rights or contribute rights or full control or design. So depending on your permission level. So just showing enough information to the right appropriate users at the right place in context of their environment. Now, obviously, this is a pretty old screenshot. It's from SharePoint 2010, I think. Let me show you something that Microsoft is doing these days to provide contextual help within, Office 365. It's a Need Help tab, right? The Need Help tab appears when you go to office.com. When you click on the Need Help tab, it shows you the first thing I think these days, and they keep on changing the experience, unfortunately, a little bit, but now I believe it shows you a bot and says, hey, how can I help you? So you can write a question and hopefully they'll know the answer. There's also a search mechanism so you can change the toggle. So now you can search for information. But the Need Help tab is always there on office.com, right? That's great. I applaud Microsoft for doing that. The question, though, then becomes, why not provide the Need Help tab everywhere? When the users go. Anywhere they go, everywhere at their moment of need, it's always available. So you can extend Microsoft's example and provide the Need Help tab. Showing these mocked up screenshots over here. You can definitely do that technically to provide the Need Help tab everywhere. Let me actually zoom in here just in case we can't see it. See right here. So this is Outlook, OneDrive, Excel, SharePoint, and everywhere else. Just having that mechanism available where if a user clicks on the Need Help tab, in this case, they have access to provide feedback. They have access to search the repository. Maybe if you have a bot implemented, to search using the bot. If we have a service desk, ServiceNow or something else implemented, they can open up a ticket. All these things should be available from wherever they are. Why should they have to go looking for it? Why should the help not come to them, right? There's a concept of taking the learning and the training and the help to the user instead of having the user go looking for it. It just makes it much easier for them and you get better adoption too. Another thing, once again, I want to take an example of what Microsoft is doing, then I'll show you some other outside examples and everything else as to providing visual cues and help in context of the user's environment. So I'm sure you've seen this. Some of these are animated images that you should be seeing that when a new functionality is out there that Microsoft puts out, or something that they've changed, they say, hey, here's how you can share your forms. Here's a new Outlook, or I know this is the first time you're in OneDrive. Let me show you and walk you through it. Those of you who are experts in some of the stuff, this might be like, oh, well, I already know this thing. I don't need to go through this splash screen or the walkthrough or whatever. Let me just dismiss it. But for end users, this is pretty good stuff, especially if they're not expecting the change and they see the change. It's better to welcome them, help them understand the change before just throwing them into it. And Microsoft is not alone. I'm sure you have seen this already, that many companies out there, these are some from my own personal experiences because I've been a customer of all these, but many companies out there like Citibank, in this case, American Express, Adobe, Discover.org, which is now ZoomInfo, they all do that. They all have some type of tutorial, some splash screen, some walkthrough, inline help, all these kind of things that appear because this is how they show, a user like myself, like you, if you're coming to see to something new, to welcome you before throwing you into it. And you can definitely do that also for your users if you like. You can show banners like that, not that difficult to do. You can show pop-up boxes. You can show walkthroughs. You can do all that stuff. Technically, it's all possible. And you're giving that information, putting that information directly in front of the user, injecting it right there. Imagine COVID-19 hit, everybody went home. I know one of our customers, they did this where they had actually the welcome, not the welcome, but the message from the CEO that popped up the next time anybody went to their intranet. And the CEO actually talked about what the company was doing, empathized with the users, telling them, we understand this is a difficult time. Here's what we're doing as a company. Here's what we want to do for you. Here's how you can get help, etc., etc. I thought it was a very good gesture to do that for the CEO, and they did that with a announcement basically that came up as a pop-up. Okay, so sometimes you need that stuff. So that was my take on providing just-in-time, context-sensitive help to people. Number 3. Evaluating user behavior continuously and making changes accordingly. So we have to remember that end user training and support cannot begin and end. So the whole concept of training people, especially end users, cannot be a project. It's got to be ongoing, in my humble opinion. Sarah Haas, who I believe actually she's doing also a track keynote, but for a different track at this exact same time right now for user adoption, I believe. She said this, and I captured this one time. I really agree with Sarah, that user adoption is a journey, it's not a destination. If you stop investing and engaging your users, adoption will slow and eventually die out. The whole user adoption, user training, user support, the whole concept of all these things, it cannot just be a project. It's more like a service that you provide, ongoing service. User adoption is a service to people. Okay. Just like any service that you provide, you're providing them tools, you're providing them information. The whole concept of getting people help and training continuously also has to be a service that a department, that a team, that maybe an individual, maybe you provide ongoing. I know it's not easy. In this case, sometimes people say, well, I don't have time for all this. Well, it's up to you if you make time and put this into your regular job description, or for your team to do that, or users just stop caring. Unfortunately, that's the unintentional result many times. So let me actually talk about a story of something that happened, and then I'll talk about exactly how you can prevent that story from happening to you. Michigan University, not far from where I am in Chicago. We did a project for them many years ago. And this was a migration project specific to SharePoint, going from one SharePoint version to the other SharePoint version. Everything came over from their existing intranet to the new intranet. We tried to put everything in the new one, made it look beautiful and all that, right? 2 months later, after the launch, we looked at what are people doing? What are they clicking on? What are they searching? What we found out was that the top thing that people were searching for, the top search term, which was a lot of queries for that, there was no answer for that term on the intranet. Right? The top thing, and that information was not on the intranet. So imagine how many disappointing people were out there, unfortunately. That term, you'd be surprised, was actually cafeteria menu. People were looking for the cafeteria menu and they could not find it. Okay. This was very unfortunate that this was the top thing that people were looking for, and this was one of the main things that was not carried over. Everything else was carried over, like faculty info, session info, class info, things that student would care about, but not this thing, which everybody cared about, the cafeteria menu. So that goes to see that you have to give them what they want, what they need, before just getting them the stuff that you think they need. So moving forward, because I am short on time a little bit now, we have to understand what training items, what help items they're clicking on. Okay, very important. Understand what is it exactly that from what you've provided them, what are they clicking on in the first 2 months, let's say after launch. User behavior, just understanding that with analytics is super important, more important than asking users, taking surveys, because in the surveys, you don't always get the answers you want. It's the user behavior and the analytics. If you look at that, that's when you know exactly what they're doing. And if you want to talk more about this or anything of how this is done, please reach out to me later and we can talk about that. In addition to what they're clicking on, what are they searching for? So the stuff before and these are actual things that people have clicked on, actual thing that people have searched for within the first month or 2 months of when we deploy some of these solutions to customers. And then you go back and you look at exactly what they're looking for, right? So in this case, for example, let me see if I can draw here a little bit. They're looking for, can you delete a document? Good question. Looking for just editing pages. Okay, recall, and here that they've looked at recall, how do I recall email? Makes sense. But they're also looking for things like, how do I print? What's the holiday information that I need to know? I mean, they're looking for all the things that they care about. It's not just going to be technical stuff, like this one also, out of office. How do I set up out of office? They're looking at that in the email. So these things, they care about these things, and we need to provide that information. So you look at the clicks, you look at the searches, you do that weekly after launch for the first 3 months, and then monthly after that till 6 months, and then quarterly after 6 months after that. Now that's a formula that we use. You don't have to use that obviously, but that's just a suggestion. You look at that, on that basis, you understand exactly what it is that they're looking for, and then give it to them. If that information doesn't exist, create that information. If that information already exists, but it's not easily findable, put that in your index, your search index next time, so then it is easily findable, right? That helps quite a bit. Now, knowing what people have searched for, knowing what they've clicked on already, you have a pretty good idea of what they want, what they need. So then the next thing is providing monthly end user webinars. You choose relevant topics like what are they struggling with, what are they searching for, what are they clicking on, plus what are your company initiatives? What do you want them to know? And you combine both of that together. You have short webinars on a monthly basis. We have tried personally doing 60 minutes. Doesn't work as nicely unless you just in comparison to 30 minutes. We found that to be more effective personally. From our experience, your mileage may vary. So 30 minutes, 15 minutes demo, 15 minutes Q&A works really nicely. You could probably do it more frequently if needed on a weekly or bi-monthly basis. But usually monthly end user webinars on a regular basis going forward works out very nicely. And I have some topic suggestions also that we have used, that we continue to use at Visual SP to help our customers with. These topics might help you as well. Many people are confused about first and foremost Outlook and Teams. Hey, now I got both. Do I send an email? Do I send a chat? Do I do a channel conversation? When to use what? Working across applications, devices, communicating using live event, which is what we're using right now, live event, right, for this, as opposed to a meeting, and other things like that. So take that if you like. Hopefully this helps you. Then how do you quantify everything? We talked about all these different things, and with the last few minutes left of this presentation, let's talk about the quantification of everything. How do you know if things are working, if they're not working? What do you tell the boss, right? What do you tell the boss? How's it coming? In my opinion, you look at the metrics that matter to you, to your company, okay? Don't just think about or see the metrics that others are using. Look at the metrics that matter to you and use that. So I have a suggestion here. Most organizations, most teams, they're looking at the time saved, the money saved, increase in productivity, maybe increase in actual revenue. If you have those things, and if you could do that successfully, that would help a lot. In this particular case, something that we do also is we provide our customers understanding of exactly how many training items or help items were viewed in a particular period of time. And then after that, based on that views, how many person hours were saved. And then based on that, if you had a support person doing all these things instead of a a system that you already have put in place, how much would that support person cost, and how much money you're saving for that support person, not having that support person, but doing it more automatically by the things that I've already talked about, providing context-sensitive help and doing this, having this feedback loop, and providing help iteratively. So providing the quantification in this way, hours saved, money saved, goes a long way. If you want to talk more about this and how this is calculated, please reach out to me afterwards. In fact, the next slide is where I actually talk about the next steps and just my information. So reach out to me and we can definitely talk. But ROI numbers, just the return on investment, is super important in my humble opinion. Once again, you can download my presentations. This is the bit.ly link, bit.ly/Asif, that's me, conference. You can reach out to me also, asif@visualsp.com or at Asif Rehmani, and we can definitely talk more. At Asif Rehmani, of course, is Twitter. Actually, at this point, let me also show you that if you need it, here's the long link. Let me see if I can find the chat here. I can put that in there as well. The long link that you could use. Oh, I don't have access to the unfortunately the questions here that I see. Maybe you can just put this down if you need it. If the bit.ly link doesn't work for you, or if it's blocked, here's how you can go to get the presentation. All right. With that, I'm going to end. I was told that I should end at about 9:50, which is a minute remaining, so perfect timing. Please do reach out to me if you want to talk about any of this stuff further. If you want that PowerPoint and you cannot get this for some reason, reach out to me in email and I'll help you out. Hopefully this was helpful to you. I love hearing feedback as well, both good and constructive. So reach out to me for that too. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks a lot. I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point, but I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much, everybody.